Thank you, Pastor Satish and Metro Church of God for this opportunity to come to you. And as I'm looking at the participants, I see almost an equal number of participants that we had last night. So that is a good sign that we did not have too many dropouts from last night. So even though I don't know who you were, I mean, at least most of you came back on a Saturday morning. So I thank God for that. And as Pastor Satish said, if we can have your cameras on, at least at the time of that we're having our Q&A, that'll be great. And so that we'll be able to see face to face and talk. And as we were actually before the meeting, we were conversing, and it is such an irony that we live only 10 or 15 miles apart here, but it has been almost a year plus that we have even seen people face to face. I mean, who thought last March in 2020 that this would be our plight in 2021? And even as we think that this is kind of like we've turned the corner, we're hearing more and more incidents of new people being diagnosed and all that stuff. I mean, so let's continue to trust in God so that God will continue to empower, equip, and ignite us so that we will be awakened for the coming of the Lord. The topic again, redeeming family amidst the pandemic. So this morning, as instructed, I will try to speak more in English, but probably might lace it with a little bit of Malayalam, but probably mostly going in English. And my PowerPoint presentation, as I said last night, I will convert that to PDF and send to Pastor Satish after the session, and he will be able to share that with the church members as needed. I would like to spend more time today in Q&A. So I have prepared lesser slides than last night for today's session so that we'll be able to have less of a monologue and we'll be able to have more of a dialogue today. And I trust in God that we will have the sufficient time to do that. So as I ended last night, we were talking about, we use preventive medicine for everything, but why not for family or healthy marriage? And we see this as a problem in our churches, in our community. I am a certified a presenter and also an administrator for a program called Prepare and Enrich. And Prepare and Enrich is a program that has the highest number of marriage counseling and marriage assessments in the entire world in their portal. They have over 6 million assessments already ported into their portal. God allowed me and also Dr. Tom Zudikler to go through the training. So we are able to administer the assessments as well as we are able to do trainings for people who actually want to be trained to do that. One thing that I noticed from there, in a humorous sense, I would say, they actually named it so well that they said, prepare and enrich. And that is the name of the company itself. And the reason why they put prepare and enrich is, one is premarital and two is postmarital, meaning premarital for prepare, for people who want to come and do the premarital counseling. And then enrichment is for people who are already married to be looking at what is going on in their lives. Where have they come from where they were before in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the road in their marriage? Let me tell you, I've been using it for 15 plus years now. And every premarital counseling, and I think I've done over 150 in my 20 plus years, and then using Prepare and Enrich, I've used at least 75 plus using the Prepare and Enrich assessment tool. Every premarital counseling, I make them go, and the groom and the groom to be and the bride to be to go and do the assessment first. And it is usually, my final assessment is almost 25 pages. And with that assessment, I start my premarital counseling sessions. If they do have the time, I do need at least 6 sessions to complete that my premarital counseling sessions before they can walk into the altars of marriage. So it has worked very, very well. I mean, going over those areas. But let me tell you that every post-marital counseling that I have done, has been because of a problem. I'm yet to see a single couple come to me and say, I want to see, or we want to see where we are. What it means is that I'm yet to see a single Indian couple, and that has been my primary group of people that I have done counseling with. A single Indian couple who have proactively come to me and said that, Pastor, we want to do an assessment to see where we are in our lives. So the intended outcome of Prepare and Enrich is not being followed by at least Indians. Probably Americans are doing it. Indians are reactive and not proactive. We are proactive in some sense, in some areas, but when it comes to marriage, we are very, very reactive. So, when you look at marriage, I mean, when I do the assessments, there are 4 types of couples that we usually see in the entire world. And this is not on my slide, and I'm just doing this extempore. You have vitalized couples. Vitalized couples are the people who are really, really, really doing well in their lives, meaning they are matched spiritually, temperamentally, physically, every aspect of life, they match each other. And that is vitalized. And then the second group of people are the harmonious couples. So I used the pots and the pans analogy last night in the kitchen. And that is a harmonious couple, the pot and the pan people, meaning they hit each other sometimes, meaning not physically. I mean, they bump into each other emotionally or verbally. They do have differences of opinion, but they get along well. And that is the harmonious couples. And the third group of people is conflicted couples. Conflicted couples. And conflicted couples are the ones who usually come to a marriage counselor for counseling, meaning they do have a serious problem. And if they are not able to nip it at this point, they are going to end up in a possible divorce in their life. And the last is devitalized couples. Devitalized couples is a group of people who have absolutely no spark in their marriage, and they basically do not talk to each other. They are like the South Pole and the North Pole, even though they may be living under one roof. So I'm yet to see a harmonious couple come to me for counseling and say, Pastor, we want to see where we are. Or 5 years we've been married. If I was doing this with you in person, one thing that I would always do as an icebreaker when I do my marriage counseling session as an icebreaker is I ask 4 questions. I give post-its to all the couples who are attending. I'll give post-its to all the people who are attending. And I say, without consulting each other, answer 4 questions. And these are the 4 questions that I will ask. What is the favorite color of your spouse? Second is, what is the favorite food of your spouse? Third is, what is the favorite dress of your spouse? And then the fourth is, what is the favorite vacation spot of your spouse? Simple questions, right? We assume that we have done it all. 29 years. And Pastor Satish is looking at Sister Anita and asking, at least now I will ask you as to what that favorite color, so that I will not make this mistake if I ever have to sit in front of Pastor Leslie ever again. I have to tell you, I have done this in over 100 churches in America, UK, and in India. 95% of the time, our Indian couples have failed miserably. We have failed miserably. We have been married for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. We still assume that Pastor Satish assumes that Sister Anita likes green because she's wearing green today. That doesn't mean that that's the color that she loves. And we keep loading her with green churidars every anniversary or birthday or whatever. Have we really, really tried to learn who and what our spouses are? This is called being proactive. This is being proactive. And many, many times we are not able to do that. What happens? It basically ends up in conflict. And I told you yesterday or last night that 99% of the people who are married, they do have problems. 1% do say that they don't have problems. I'm sure you all heard this hilarious story about, people dying and then going to heaven, and Saint Peter was putting people on either side and saying that all those who listen to your spouse move to the left side and stand there, and all those, all those who listen to your spouse all along your marriage move to the left side and stand there. And almost all men who were there actually moved to the left side, and there was just one man who was staying put. He sat there, and Saint Peter walked over to him and he said, I'm so glad at least there is one person who did not entirely listen to his spouse all through the marriage. What is the secret of your marriage? And then he said, she had told me that until I tell you, do not move. And that's why I did not move. So you will not have a conflict in your life if you basically are mum or dumb or you don't talk. But if you are people who have a mouth, and let me tell you, in psychology, it says that 24,000 words are there for a woman. 24,000 words. There are exceptions. 22 to 24,000 words in a given day. That is basically a woman's mouth. And a man's mouth is about 6,000 words. So you do the math. 6,000 words for a man and 24,000 words for a woman. That is basically a woman has 4 times the mouth of a man. So let's say that the woman doesn't work and the man works for 10, 12 hours in an IT field or whatever. The man has already spent 5,800 words at work, and he is coming back with 200 left. And then the woman is waiting with 23,900 because she only had 100 to spend during the day. So basically, now you do the math in the evening. That's when you get cliche communication, because at that time, ആര്യ വന്നിട്ട് പറയും, പിള്ളേർ അവിടെ കയറി, പറങ്കാവിൽ കയറി, അതേ കയറി, ഇതേ കയറി. And the only answer that the woman has is, the man has is, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, uh-huh, mm, mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's it. So nothing beyond that. So basically what happens is communication breaks because of the fact that there is no physical proximity. So let's just be very, very clear. Conflict is everywhere. In Chinese, stress is basically denoted by 2 words, danger and opportunity. Danger and opportunity. So Chinese people think of as stress as danger or opportunity. So if it is danger, you can run away from it. But if it is an opportunity, you can walk right into it and make the most of it. So, conflict in many, many, many times, if you are able to clearly understand the process completely, you will be able to get better at it. I posted something on Facebook, 2-3 days ago. It said the way of escape in a furnace is through it, not out of it. You have to go through the furnace in order to get out of the furnace. Many times we want to have all these silver bullets. And many times when, there was one time that we were doing a marriage counseling session in New York. And then we were talking about problems. We were talking about the issues and all that stuff. And one pastor basically lost control. So he said to myself and to Dr. Thomas Idikla, we know about the problems. You just give us the solutions. We don't want to hear the problems. You just give us the solution. Unfortunately, the psychiatrists back in those days were called head shrinkers. I don't know if you've ever heard that term. Psychiatrists were known by the name head shrinkers. So basically their job was to just to shrink the head. You have Dr. Rama in your church, who does ECT. ECT is electroconvulsive therapy. I mean, and she is very skilled in doing that. I mean, ECT used to be a process that used to be done very profusely back in India. And I was doing my residency, my internship in Meerut Psychiatric Center. There was a hilarious thing that was actually going on. What they used to do is every morning, 100 plus residents in the Meerut Psychiatric Center, they'll be ready for the ECT. Do you know what they used to do? The first patient will lay on the bed, and the second, third, fourth, and the fifth will hold them. And then the doctor will come and do the ECT. And then the first will get off the bed, the second will lay on the bed, and the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth will hold them. And then the second will get the ECT. It became routine practice for them that they get their ECT, meaning shock treatment in the morning, so that they get perked up. So this is where the word head shrinker actually came from, because it just give some electric shock to the head, to either to kind of like shock it down or to shock it up. I mean, so psychiatry, unfortunately, is the only field in the world whereby nobody will be able to completely ascertain what exactly is going on. The first time that they come to us for an MSc or mental status examination, when I do an MSc, or when a psychiatrist does an MSc, or a psychologist does a mental status examination, many times, if they're very psychotic, we come with a diagnosis, very easy diagnosis. And if anybody who is in the psychiatry field, psychology field, you will understand what I'm talking about. The easiest diagnosis that we will put them on is psychosis NOS, meaning psychosis not otherwise specified. Very easy, because we know that the person has psychosis, but we don't want to put that person as bipolar, or manic, or depressive, or schizophrenic, or personality disorder, or anything like that. We just want to say psychosis NOS. So the reason is, nobody has known the human mind. That's what the word of God says. Who has known the mind of man? You cannot go into that. So conflicts are there everywhere, but skill and practical tools in resolving conflict are very important. So you probably have been married for 10, 15, 20 years in your life. Let me give you a simple test to see if you really have a conflict in marriage. You can answer this question in your leisure. These are the things that you need to ask yourself. Do you accuse each other? And I have highlighted those words. Do you provoke each other? ഈ പ്രൊവോക്ക് എന്ന് പറയുന്ന വേർഡ് ഞാൻ മലയാളത്തിൽ അത് ട്രാൻസ്ലേറ്റ് ചെയ്യാം, ചൊറിയുക. So the thing is, this word murmur is murmur, murmur, burbur, burbur, budubud. Everything, even it's almost like a babel, what do you call, conflict of language all over the world. Spanish, English, Malayalam, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu. It just rhymes with each other. We are people who just murmur with each other. Do you provoke each other? And do you turn bitter out of irritation? So does that make you turn bitter out of irritation? Do you become anxious in front of the other? Do you become anxious in front of the other? How long does it take to make up? And how have you reconciled in the past? These 6 questions will answer if you have a conflict or not. If you answer yes to more than 3 of this, you have a conflict in marriage. And I'm sure all of you are listening to me, and the man who is talking to you, who is turning into 29 years of marriage, we all have conflicts. The reason why we still exist is 1, because of the grace of God, 2, because of our wisdom and God-given understanding to overcome the issues. See, one of the biggest success stories of our lives is the fact that we have resolved our conflicts, in a day, so that you don't allow it to go past one day. The word of God very clearly says, do not let the sun go down in your anger. So what are the major causes of marriage conflicts? 5 things that I will identify here. temperament, background, money management, spiritual status, selfishness. Let me just focus on background, money management, spiritual status, and selfishness. I'm not going to go into it because of lack of time. Let me just touch on temperament for a minute, because of the fact that I spoke about personality last night. And I spoke about personality, and I said personality comes from the word persona, which is a theatrical mask. And that is basically something that we put on. But temperament is the spiritual DNA of a person. Temperament is a spiritual DNA of a person. You know what happens when DNA is altered, right? I mean, what happens when a DNA is altered for a person? When a DNA is altered, the person becomes something else. The entire makeup of the person changes. So you cannot alter the DNA, or should not alter the DNA of a person. The same way, you're born with a temperament. There are at least 5 temperaments, and I did my doctoral program in this. And so I'm not going to go into a psychological class yet this morning, but you just may want to look at yourself in terms of where you actually have your temperament, if you have not yet done a personality or a temperament analysis of your own. Melancholial temperament, that is number 1. And number 2, choleric temperament. Number 3 is phlegmatic temperament. Number 4 is sanguine temperament. And number 5 is supine temperament. While I was doing my doctoral program, one of the things that I did was I looked at 12 disciples of Jesus and saw which temperament that which ones had. And I found out that the 12 of them had like different temperaments, and all 5 temperaments either truly manifested in the disciples or blended in their disciples. See, the melancholian temperament, they say, we back in those days, we used to say movies, melancholy movie, or the songs were melancholy. I mean, you know why? Because it was more sad, were kind of depressive. There are so many people who just do not want to be too much associated with people. There are people with melancholial temperament. And then the choleric temperament. What is a choleric temperament? My way or the highway. I want to do it my way. And if you don't do it my way, it's not going to happen. So we see it a lot in our families and our churches, right? So we have choleric temperament people. And then you have the phlegmatic temperament. You know what the phlegmatic temperament is? The happy-go-lucky person. The sky is falling. He still is able to say, okay, let it be. I mean, and he is still under his covers. And that's the phlegmatic temperament. And then the sanguine temperament. And what is a sanguine temperament? The sanguine temperament is the person who basically is able to get along with everybody. It does not matter who that person is. He is able to get along with everybody. The sanguine temperament. And the supine temperament. What is the supine temperament? Here you go. Like, I'm going to bend down and you hit me any way you want. It's okay. You just basically is a stupor, allowing everybody to be trampling over you. So see, we are all born with this. We are all born with these temperaments. It is something that is our spiritual DNA. How many husbands are able to identify their wives' temperaments? How many wives are able to identify their husband's temperament? Don't try to make a melancholy a choleric. Don't try to make a choleric a phlegmatic. Don't try to make a phlegmatic a supine. Don't try to make a supine a sanguine. They can only identify what their temperaments are and make the necessary adjustments. And that's where conflict resolution takes an upper hand. See, in temperament, there are 3 areas that you need to be very careful about. There are 3 areas. One is in inclusion, second is in control, and the third is in affection. Inclusion, control, and affection. Inclusion is on the surface relationships. Surface relationship. We see these people casually at work, at church, in even in family. Surface relationship. Now, affection is in the deep relationship. Deep relationship is the husband-wife, children relationship. And control is in your decision-making relationship. All these three areas, your temperament has a huge impact. So do you know what I do? Whenever people come to me for counseling, if they come to me for individual counseling, they have to go through a temperament analysis. I do a TPA, a temperament analysis test. And once they do the temperament analysis, I know what type of temperament they have. And based on that temperament, I'll be able to give them advice based on what they can do to adjust, to make sure that they are able to become better people in the community, better people in their families. See, I don't know. I mean, knowing me, I don't know if anybody will be able to identify my temperament. My temperament is sanguine choleric. That is what I am. I'm sanguine choleric. Sanguine meaning I try to be as gregarious as I can. I get along with people, and I have a huge friendship base, and I am very, connected with the community. But at the same time, I'm a control freak. I am a control freak. I want every I to be dotted and every T to be crossed. And this is, we have weekly handouts in our church. We have weekly programs in our church. We have Facebook in our church. We have as you guys do, we have a website for our church. We have Twitter account for our church. We have Instagram for our church. Unfortunately, the choleric pastor that I am, I still have control over all of them. I have not given up control over any of the social media or any of these things, because of the fact that I want to make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted. I just sat here after I completed my weekly handout with my sermon outline for tomorrow for Sunday service. Many people come to me and said, Pastor, you work full time. Pastor, you are also doing full-time church. Give this up to somebody else. For some reason, because of my temperament, I am not able to give up. We need to understand what the temperament of the person is before we are actually able to overcome it. So, how spouses understand each other? How are the differences causing tension? What can be done to relieve the tension? Are similarities causing the tension? What can be done about it? What are the strong and weak areas of each other? These are all based on temperament, dearly beloved. Based on temperament. The differences are because, we tried, see, in chapter 12, verses 1 and 2 of the book of Romans, Paul is talking about do not be conformed and be transformed. There are two words that are very, very significant here: conformation and transformation. Conformation is trying to fit into a pattern, but transformation is change from inside out. Think about this. Conformation is we are trying to fit into a pattern. Transformation is changing inside out. But from the temperament perspective, many families do lose it because of the fact that we try to fit our wives into a box, a pattern. We try to fit our husbands into a pattern. Many times I do see this when people get married, especially when I came as an FOB. I mean, in 1993, when I came to US, I mean, I was an FOB. I mean, fresh off the boat. I mean, that's basically what I was. I mean, I had my own issues. I mean, I thought that certain things was, I mean, I thought there was a lot of people with Joes in America. And later I realized that it was not Joes, it was Jose. And then, I thought that, eggplant parmesan was pronounced parmigiana. I thought that Parmesan cheese was pronounced parmesan. I mean, because that's the way that I did. I mean, there was so many things about the American lingo that I did not know about. And there had to be a lot that my wife had to teach me, but she taught me the right way. I mean, I taking the permission from preemptive bail from Pastor Satish. I mean, there used to be a time that the first few weeks, I mean, the first 2 weeks into the church, I mean, I started preaching in church as a youth speaker. Pastor Korean George, my then pastor, would allow me to speak in church. 2 weeks after church, after I started attending the church. And I was this Bible thumping preacher. From the pulpit, pretty much everything was, thus saith the Lord. And we were actually in 602 Vanderbilt Avenue in Brooklyn, New York at that time, and which was a very, very small building. And we had over 150 people just basically right. So as I am on the pulpit preaching, there are kids who are actually sitting 2 feet away from me, right in front of me. Some of them are senior pastors of churches now, including Pastor Cecil Matthew. As I am preaching, thus saith the Lord, my hand was like almost at their nose. And I thought every time that I was preaching, these kids were laughing and they were talking to each other. I did not know why they were laughing and talking to each other. It irritated me further. I said, why are these people being disrespectful of me? My English was relatively good. I am able to speak English relatively okay. Not as good as someone who's born and brought up in America, but my grammar is okay. My pronunciation was not bad. I don't say pronounce and pronunciation. I say pronounce and pronunciation. Pronounce is a verb and pronunciation is a noun, but many Malayalis do pronunciation as pronunciation. I was not saying win and I was not saying victory. When I was saying victory, my lips were flat, and when I was saying win, my lips were round. So my W's and my V's were pretty okay. I said, why these kids, laughing at me? Then after a few weeks, you remember the security and the honor that I was talking about last night? After my wife felt comfortable, she said, do you know why? Your body language is making them laugh. Why? Because when I was doing, thus saith the Lord, I will not show the sign, but my middle finger was pointing towards these kids. Because I did not know that all my other fingers bent down and my middle finger pointing at them, that was a derogatory thing in America. I did not know that. So now I know when I'm saying, thus saith the Lord, my index finger comes out, not my middle finger. All the other fingers are bent down, So these are certain things that we need to understand, but at the same time, husband and wife must be able to communicate effectively with each other so that they can also, some people try to alter them so drastically, and then they end up in a lot of conflicts. So what is needed? I would say a sense of fairness, putting your marriage first. See, many times when churches break, it just hurts me so much when churches break. Well, because I say, if you really put Jesus first, you would not do this. The same way, how many marriages break because of the fact that family is not the forefront of their lives. Selfishness becomes the forefront of their lives. Sense of fairness, putting marriage first, willingness to forgive, ability to listen, respect for each other, and awareness when to apologize. I'll go into this in detail, but I'm going very quickly because I want to give you time to ask me questions. Be honest and willing to admit that you may be at fault. Be honest and willing to admit that you, and I said, you are at fault. I said, you may be at fault. Anytime a conflict occurs, be willing and be honest to admit that you may be at fault. This is going to be very difficult for choleric temperaments because it is my way or the highway. മലയാളത്തിൽ പറയും താൻ പിടിച്ച മുയലിന് കൊമ്പ് മൂന്ന്. Because, see, many people don't even know the meaning of that saying. I asked the other day a question to my church members. I asked, do you know what PRN stands? Have you worked as PRN? And they said, oh, yeah. You know what PRN it means? Yes. We all work PRN. I said, what does PRN stand for? PRN. when they call, we go, and that's PRN. And I said, what does PRN stand for? PRN. And said, PRN stands for pro re nata, use as needed. That's what PRN stands for. But we all work as PRN in hospitals without knowing what PRN stands for. Many times that is what we have in our lives as well. We are just basically, താൻ പിടിച്ച മുയലിന് കൊമ്പ് മൂന്ന്. What is the irony in that? Not because of the three horns, but because of the fact that the rabbits do not have horns in the first place. That's the irony in the whole thing. We say the three horns and we think that, oh, that's because more than two horns. No, the irony in the whole thing is the rabbits basically do not have horns. You hold the rabbit by the ear, not by the horn. So I held a rabbit and it has three horns. That's how we become exaggeratively over ourselves. When it comes to things like this. So be honest and willing to admit, especially those of you who are choleric. Malayali males are choleric. If I do not want to use the word MCP, I used to use that when I was younger. You know what MCP stands for, right? Male chauvinistic pigs. I used to do that when I was young. I don't use that now, especially as a minister of the gospel. But many times I think, I take away the pig analogy, but I will use, we are very male chauvinistic. God has put an order in the family, husband and the wife. Husband is the head of the wife, but always know male and female, he created them. That's what the word of God says. Male and female, he created them. Before it says God created man in his own image and likeness. Male and female, he created them, which means male and female were created in the image and likeness of God. Nobody should ever think that males were created in the image and likeness of God and females were not. That's not the issue. The word is very clear about it. So be honest and willing to admit that you may be at fault. Never try to hurt. I have highlighted some words here. If I had time, I would go into this in detail. Never try to hurt. Do you know why? Without even trying, you've already hurt the other. When a conflict had arisen, when a conflict arose to a point, you've already done damage. Don't try. You've already done it. And then the third thing, when the desire to hurt arrives, take a timeout. See, in basketball, when you're not hitting the basket and when you're hitting the rim and then you only have 45 seconds left, what does the coach do? The coach calls for a timeout and the coach regroups the players so that you can be put back into the court so that you will be able to utilize the 45 seconds effectively. Why not a timeout? I tell the females, I say that you just feel like hitting your husband. You just feel like hitting him. The best thing would be go into the kitchen, take some atta and start making some chapati. The chapati that you're going to make that day is going to be the softest because you can hit it as much as you want and it will be really, really fluffy roti. And then for the males, I would say, you really feel like hitting your wife, just go out, take the lawnmower and starts mowing the lawn. Get some energy, just deflated. Spend up some energy. Once that energy is gone, that the negative energy that is building within you, that you really want to hurt your wife, you really want to hurt your husband, verbally, psychologically, physically, because of the fact that this problem happened, just take a time out. Do something productive and effective. Just get that energy out into some other positive channel. Then all said and done, you will be able to talk more calmly. When the husband is boiling at 100 degrees and the wife is boiling at 110 degrees, never ever going to make anything done at that time. I would say your rationality is going to be subservient to your emotion. You know, Pastor Satish, I don't know if you have noticed this, but I have noticed this in Malayali community that the many times people who are not able to speak properly in English, I mean, in our Malayali churches, speak broken English during general body meetings, and that too when they are very angry. I mean, because they don't speak in their mother tongue, because they start speaking in other in a language that they're not very comfortable with. This happens in board meetings, this happens in committee meetings, and this happens in general body meetings. I've noticed this many times in connection with conferences and local churches. Okay, now this happens at home also. Many times because you know why? We're not thinking, we are angry, and we are not rational. We become emotional. Vigaram Vivekathinu Vadimaranna Oravasta. So we have so much emotion pending that we don't think rationally. So take a time out. Always be willing to forgive. So I talked about this: cliche communications, factual communication, emotional communication, opinionated communication, no holds barred communication. That's the communication style that must be fostered in families. But many families are more into cliche and factual communication. And because of that, all these are needed. Cliche, emotional, factual, opinionated are all needed. But no holds barred communication is what God expects from a family. Let me move very quickly here. Commonly heard statements: he is, she is the cause of all the problems. Our love for each other is gone. We don't talk anymore. He or she expects me to do everything. He or she makes all the decisions. I never thought I married his family or her family too. We can never agree on finances. We have no sex life. These are very commonly heard statements. These are all taken from my marriage counseling sessions. Do you know what the common factor in this? I will show you one more slide. You always forget to take out the garbage. And I'm doing some animation here so that you understand exactly what I mean. You're never ready on time. Why don't you ever listen to me? You wouldn't understand me anyway. I should have figured out that you would mess it up. You just like your mother. Remember what you did last time? Do you know what this is? This is basically universal generalizations. We take it to the superlative degree. We take it to the highest degree. Always, never, ever, never. Always wanting to take it to universal generalization. We take one thing. One Achan once time told me this, that, one Amama told me that Achan, even after 30 years of marriage, whenever a problem comes, he would say that when I came to see you for the Pendakanal, the tea that was served did not have enough sugar in it. For 30 years, he kept on with that thing that when he went to his wife's house for the Pendakanal Chadangu, the tea that was served did not have enough sugar. We are people who never let go. We forgive but don't forget. We universally generalize. We exaggerate it to the 10th degree. We come up with superlative degrees. Do you know what happens? We hurt the other because of that. So, 4 things I would say: avoid 4 marriage killers. Avoid 4 marriage killers. 1, withdrawal. 2, escalation. 3, belittling. 4, false beliefs. If we can do this, we will be able to succeed. I spoke about belittling in detail with regards to my own family life last night. So I don't want to go into that. Withdrawal. The choleric personality, the choleric husband that I am, basically, I don't like what my wife brought to me for discussion. They said, end of story. We're not talking about it. We done with this. We're not talking about it. So we withdraw from the spouse. And then the other thing is escalation. Every communication ends up in not discussion, but a debate. Not in debate, but now in fight. See, stress unmanaged causes um, frustration, and unmanaged frustration causes anger. Unmanaged anger causes aggression. This is a cycle. It starts off with a stress, a conflict, but unmanaged conflict or a stress causes frustration. Unmanaged frustration causes anger. Unmanaged anger causes aggression. That's when you start throwing things. That's when you start raising your voice. That's when you start clenching your fist. That's when you start raising your hand. That's when you start doing things that you're not supposed to be doing. So make sure that we stay away from escalation. There has to be a spiritual thermometer that actually measures where we are going with this, so that we'll be able to take a time out and come back. Belittling, I'm not going to go into it, but false beliefs. She is telling them everything I say to her. Do you know what this means? Do you know what that is in psychological or psychiatric terms? It's called paranoia. It's simply stated, that is paranoia, meaning we become delusional or hallucinatory, and we start thinking that they are actually talking about us when two people are talking. So we start saying that, oh, my wife is telling them everything that I say to her, or my husband is telling them about everything that I say to him. That is false beliefs. Do not foster them. And my final slide here for this presentation: make 5 promises to each other. Confirm your beliefs to God's truths. Be filled with God. Make him the centerpiece. Find God's best in every trial. Stop the blame game. Serve each other all your living days, and communicate with love. If I had time, I would have gone into the details of all these. Some people ask me many times that, I mean, why don't you give references to the slides that you give? I want to say that God has given me a calling to be unique with this job that God has given me, this vocation that God has given me. I love Gary Thomas. I love Gary Chapman. Sam George. I love Walter Trubbish. I love Zach Poonen. I love James Dobson. I love all these men of God who are great, great, great orators and writers of God's word, especially when it comes to family and marriage counseling. But God has created me uniquely and wondrously. God has given me a gifting to do this. So, what we have done is we have gone through the life experiences ourselves as married couples at the age of 22. I was 22 and my wife was 20. We went through all the teething troubles of marriage. We went through all of them. 4 children, and now grandfather. We've gone through this family wise. We've gone through teenage issues of our children. We've gone through troubles. We've gone through PKs being looked down upon by the church members and people around, and then the frustrations of the children of a pastor within the house. We've gone through all of them. And we have also counseled hundreds of people that have come to us, couples and individuals, and we continue to do that. So it's just experience, and it's my heart, and it's our life, and we just poured that with the people that God gives us the opportunity. Thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to give at least 30 minutes. I went past 5 minutes. I went like a telegraphic presentation this morning. Sorry for being too fast. But I just wanted to finish that topic up, and I just open this for discussion and for questions. Over to you, Pastor Freddie and Pastor Satish.